There are a number of different types of braiding. I'm going to cover several of the older forms. This is called Kumihimo, and this is a Kumihimo wheel. This is a very modern one, made of a kind of a foam. The original Kumihimo wheel it looks like a drum, and it has these bobbins hanging off, and they're usually wooden and carved and incredibly beautiful. This is the very modern version, and it's the kind that you can use, and you can sit by the TV at night and you can produce braiding. The disc you can see there is the disc that you follow, and if I bring it up a little higher, you can see it has numbers on it. So in effect what you do is you follow the numbers. So for example, down here you can see 1A. So you would move 1A over to 1B. Then you would see 2A there and 2B there. So you'd move 2A to 2B. Then 3A is there, and 3B is on this side, so you'd move 3A over to 3B. 4A is there, 4A is moved over and clipped into 4B. And all the time you're doing this, you are holding the braid underneath, just to keep some tension. Then 5 on this one, 5A there to 5B means that you move that one down to there. Then the 6th move, there's a little squiggle there, and that just means that you move this around one place. So that you start again and you do 1A to 1B. And this is the kind of braid that you make. Now you can do it in lots of different sizes depending on what you're making it with. For example, this is Kumihimo braiding. And as you can see, it's much thicker than some of the other braiding, the braiding I was doing just, which is this one. So it's using the same thing, you're still using this little contraption, but you can produce very different types of braid. Okay. Now it can be used for all sorts of things. I mainly use it for handbag handles because it's very decorative. For example, if I just add a little bit, this is one of my little hand-dyed silk bags, and you can see it's been machined. And instead of putting, if you're going to have something that is so decorative and so pretty, it often feels wrong to put a dull handle on it, and sometimes you can do that, and that is the silk just hand braided like you would braid someone's hair, but it's very thick and it doesn't really go with the very fine detail. So I use the Kumihimo and I do braids, and then I put them together, I bind them together, and I turn them into a handle. And what it produces is a much more delicate little bag, and it's incredibly beautiful, and it can also obviously include a lot of the colours that you've got in the bag. Now Now the difference is, the reason they're different sizes is you're using different sized threads, and these are the threads that I would use for this one. So as you can see, they're very fine threads. They're very fine threads. And you would use, depending on how many bobbins you're having, you would possibly use somewhere between 6 and 12, maybe in 15, depending on how complex the braid is. However, these braids, the thicker, heavier ones, they use this type of thread, which is a, as you can see, a much heavier, much thicker thread. And again, the bigger the thread, the smaller number of bobbins you would normally have, otherwise it would be enormous. So you can do this very, very fine work with the thin thread, but with a thicker thread you use a smaller number. You can also just use plain old embroidery thread, which I do sometimes. The biggest difference being the embroidery thread is often duller, and this is quite shiny, and this is quite shiny, and it does give it that silken look. Wherever possible, I try to source these things from charity shops or from retailers who use it for something else and they have throwaway bits. But you can buy it. You can buy it by the metre. I think this is some that I bought by the metre because it was for something fairly specific. But wherever possible, I do like to try and recycle stuff. So that is Kumihimo. And that is a Kumihimo disc. And that's the basic method. You can also get square Kumihimo discs. So I've got this one slightly tangled up because it's been in the cupboard. And it produces a different shape. So it produces a much flatter braid that is more like, it's a little bit flat if you were using it for, again, if you were using it for handle and you wanted to use lots of threads, it would make a flatter, more manageable braid. That is Kumihimo.